Morning, everyone. Hello. Welcome to the latest webinar brought to you by the Safety and Security Event Series and 19 Group. My name is Mark Tilley. I'm the Content and Community Manager, your host for today's session. And thank you for everyone for joining us today. I know it's a very sunny, warm day out there, so we appreciate you all being inside and glued to your screens, which is very good of you all. So, firstly, for those of you that were in attendance for our last webinar, which was our look into Martin's Law at the end of June, you'll be aware that this is a very new series of webinars from us, from the Safety and Security series. And across this program, we're looking at covering all elements of the series. But today's focus is going to be on the workplace, which is a very exciting area for us. So, as you probably know, we're going to be exploring how partnerships with social enterprises are helping organizations tackle two of today's most pressing challenges, which is waste and social inequality. So whether it's rethinking office clearance or reducing carbon footprints or supporting global education, we hope that today's discussion will highlight practical, real-world examples of how workplace leaders can align their ESG goals with meaningful and measurable action. So I'm delighted to be joined by three fantastic panelists today who we hope are going to bring really good insight and experience from across this space. And I'll give them all an introduction now. Firstly, we have Michael Amos from Waste to Wonder, who I'm sure you'll all know is a brilliant social enterprise which has pioneered the concept of ethical office clearance. They repurpose furniture and equipment to support schools and community projects across the globe. We're also joined by Andy Daly from Social Enterprise UK. Andy is a passionate advocate for purpose-led business and can talk about how the wider social enterprise movement plays a crucial role in reshaping procurement and sustainability within the UK. And finally, we're joined by Angela Halliday, who is the Director of Social Impact at Sodexo. Angela will bring the perspective of a global organization that's actively working to embed social value across its supply chains and operations. So just before we bring the guests on and jump in, a little bit of housekeeping. We really want these webinars to be as interactive as possible. So if you have a look onto the right of your screen, you'll see the Q&A function. Please do get your questions in. We'll have time at the end of the webinar to get your questions into the guests. So get submitting and we'll come to them further down the line. We've also set up a poll which you'll be able to see and vote on. And we'll be able to kind of address the results of that as we get towards the end of the webinar as well. So I think after a couple of minutes from me, it's time to meet our panel. If we can bring them all to stage now. There we go. Morning, everyone. Hello. Thank you all so much for joining us. We really appreciate you giving us your time, your expertise, and there's loads for us to get stuck into. But I'm going to do a little introductory question to each of you first, and give you a chance to kind of say hello to the audience. Michael, we're going to start with you. I'd like to ask you to just give us a little bit of information about the mission behind Waste to Wonder and how do your projects deliver on both social value and environmental value.
Yeah, so one of our sort of strap lines is waste is the failure to take advantage of an opportunity. We've been operating for almost 25 years. And we saw that the assets that companies no longer needed, be it furniture or hospitality furniture or plant and machinery or kitchen equipment, isn't waste. It's an asset that can enhance lives around the world. So we pioneered ethical redistribution of those items on a big scale, to solve some major inequalities driven by extreme poverty.
Excellent, brilliant. Thanks for that. Andy, I'd like to bring you in now. Can you tell us a little bit about the role that social enterprises play in sustainability and ESG today, especially in sort of large corporate or public sector environments?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Social enterprises, the one-line definition, they're businesses with a social or environmental mission. At Social Enterprise UK, we're the national body for social enterprises, so it's a real privilege to work with so many fantastic social enterprises. We're the world's largest network of social enterprises. We believe social enterprise is our best chance of creating a fairer society and a more sustainable planet. I'll just talk a little bit about what they look like and what they do and what makes them different from other businesses. They trade like other businesses, but the key differentiator really is that they reinvest at least 50% of their profits into their social or environmental mission. Now, that mission might be around gifting majority of their profits to community projects or charities. It might be around providing training and employment opportunities to people who face specific barriers to the labour market. It might be around putting profits into helping businesses to decarbonise or using waste in a different way. But the difference is always that the purpose, the social or environmental purpose, is at the heart of why the business exists in the first place. So they are businesses that put people and planet first. All of this, of course, is very important right now as we're living through a cost of living crisis and a climate crisis. I'm sure we'll get into the business case in a moment, but the real simple crux of the matter, and Angela will be able to talk about this, representing Sodexo. If you're a large business, medium-sized business, if you're any kind of buying organization, you'll be spending lots of money every day on all of those products and services that you need to keep your business running. If you open up that potential supplier pool to social enterprises, you can leverage that existing business spend for social or environmental good. So it's not spending money differently or spending more money. It's just looking at what you're already spending and then putting people and planet at the heart of that business spend. We've had lots and lots of success over the years with lots of big businesses such as Sodexo. And naturally, the topic of today's webinar is really interesting because facilities management, workplace, waste management, it's always been a really strong area. Lots and lots of social enterprises operate in that space. So yeah, I often say that social enterprises, they solve the S in the ESG. It's a very tangible and straightforward way of bringing the S to life throughout your supply chain.
Nice, brilliant. And then Angela, coming at it from a kind of larger organization's perspective, can you talk about what made Sodexo decide to partner with social enterprises and what have you learned from that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mark, and good morning, everyone. I would start by saying it was less of a decision, but more of an imperative. So since we were formed back in the 1960s, our founder, Pierre Bellon, always recognised that his success and the success of Sodexo moving forward was going to be predicated on the partners and suppliers that supported our client offerings. So it's been there since the outset. So for decades, we've always prioritised our responsible sourcing strategy, be this a product or a service, or indeed the diversity of the supply chain that we partner with. And we absolutely recognise that social enterprise bring to our service offers that added value. In most cases, this might be the level of support of creating social impact, creating value for communities or individuals, be it social, economic or environmental. So for us, it wasn't a decision, it was an absolute imperative to do what we do in the way in which we do it.
Brilliant, excellent. Okay, nice. The next kind of couple of questions are going to be kind of to all of you. So if I just kind of ask ahead and then one of you guys can jump in and we'll see where we go. First question is kind of around the real world impact of these things. So are any of you able to share a real life example of a project that not only diverted waste from landfill, but also had measurable social impact?
Shall I jump in? I mean, that's our day-to-day.
Thanks, Michael.
We got tons and tons and tons of fantastic case studies. The thing we're really passionate about is ripple effects. We started really from the perspective of waste minimization. So our very first big project, we've done a couple of small pilot, loot and van type projects, but our first major project was for BP. So they had a site in Hemel Hempstead with in the region of 800 seating positions worth of furniture, 800 desks, 800 beds, 800 chairs, hundreds of cupboards, so a huge amount of equipment. And it was a commercially tendered project. So a lot of organizations, traditional move management companies and waste companies and skip companies were tendering for the project. And this was back in a time when the majority of the items went to landfill. The recycling was still a relatively new concept for office furniture. And we pitched the concept to BP that we would try and donate as much as possible to schools and charities and recycle everything else. So again, it was more of an environmental, it was more of the E of the ESG than the S at that stage. And my first role with the organization was effectively our first charity coordinator. We weren't yet a charity, although we became one in 2003. And I donated lots of schools to lots of schools and charities. So it was literally the yellow pages, as it was, ringing around every school and charity in the area. We've got some fantastic furniture. You can have as much as you like, because we wanted to minimize how much ultimately would go for recycling. We, over about 14 weeks, had got rid of there were 40 container loads worth of furniture, so an awful lot of equipment to start with. Roughly half of the containers over about 3 months, but we were paying to store this stuff as well. So commercially, we were watching the profit margin from this first project diminish. So it could very well have been a lovely experiment doomed to fail. But what happened was, through luck, divine intervention, serendipity, whatever your cup of tea is, from that side of things, we were introduced to a gentleman called Ahmed Chabouni. So he was the head of education at the University of Marrakesh in Morocco. And he ran a charity which still exists. He's retired now, but the charity is called CDRT, Centre of Development for the Region of Tensift. And what they were doing was addressing a cultural issue where, if a young woman didn't have a male relative and her community didn't have a secondary school, she wasn't allowed to travel unaccompanied. So her education would stop after primary school. What he was doing was identifying underutilized government buildings and, with support of the Moroccan government, adapting them to become secondary schools. So these would become secondary schools in more rural areas. We said, look, we've got all this fantastic furniture. If you can fundraise for the shipping cost, you can have as much as you like. And bear in mind, I'd been getting rid of 10 chairs, 5 cupboards, sort of bitty, slow going over a period of time. If he'd come back and said, I'd like 2 containers worth, please, I would have been delighted with that outcome. What actually happened was the King of Morocco agreed to fund what ultimately was the last 17 container loads worth of furniture. Those went out to 17 schools. We then coined the phrase "school in a box." Obviously, big box. It's a 40-foot shipping container, but we've now equipped over 1,500 schools in 44 countries. So we sort of started big. It was through that project we really started to understand the social impact. Obviously, literacy is a really powerful tool to get young people out of extreme poverty. It can help. We actually, one of the things we did early on was donate some laptops to a poetry competition that was commemorating the Casablancan bombings, and it was also an outlet. Education was an outlet for these young people as well. So it's once we understood the social impact of the waste minimization piece that I think that really cemented what we now know to be a social enterprise. And ironically, I think we were actually founded the same year that Social Enterprise UK. And up until, I think it was 2021, 2022, when I met Andy at a CBRE event, we were running in almost the exact business model of a social enterprise, in that we were socially and environmentally driven. We donated, in terms of the value of furniture, a lot more than 50% of our profits back into our social mission, and so on. So it's when I met Andy and I explained who we were and what we did, he said, "Oh, you're a social enterprise." And my first question was, "What's a social enterprise?" So despite us running in parallel for 2 decades or nearly 2 decades, we're also learning about this movement, and obviously now, having met dozens and dozens and dozens of fantastic social enterprises, we're hook, line and sinker, till the day we die, advocates of the social enterprise movement now. So again, ripple effects.
Yeah, very much so. And Andy or Angela, any real life examples that you're able to share with us?
Yeah, I'm happy to come in.